on that side, yeah.
That's what my...
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
No, I just would comment, I thought the sign looked appropriate, and that's good, because some of them that come before the board don't look appropriate, so I think that's...
Well within the flavor of the surrounding.
Yeah, it seems good, so I'll vote yes.
Can I make a motion? Okay. I move to approve HRC-15-076, a request from Alpine Signs, property owner Minnesota Street Properties LLC, to install a double-faced freestanding sign on property-zoned residential office located at 707 North Minnesota Street, APN 003-235-01. Based on the findings and conditions of approval outlined in the staff report, the standards and guidelines for her rehabilitation, Carson City Historic District guidelines, and consistent with Historic Resources Commission's policies.
Second.
Before I call for a vote, I just want to ask the applicant if you've read the recommended conditions of approval and if you agree with them.
I don't think I've read them.
It's pretty straightforward, standard stuff.
Oh, okay.
You want to read this real quick? Do you have a copy of it?
Is that it right there?
No, it's right here.
Oh.
While she's doing that, is there any public comment on this item? Hearing none, we'll let her scan that for a second. Thank you. Okay, we have a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Say nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
All right. Item number F2, requests from Peter Sinnott, property owner of Group Family Trust.
Microphone.
Wrong one. Item F2, a request from Peter Sinnott, Prop HRC. Oh, we'll get to that. Yeah, HRC 15-083. A request from Peter Sinnott, Pruitt Family Trust, and care of Marilyn Harper, to replace an existing turf area with xeriscape landscaping on property zone residential office located at 403 North Nevada Street. That's it, Susan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request from Marilyn Harper through Pete Sinnott to replace all the turf area in front of her property at 403 North Nevada with a variety of plants and a xeriscape plan, mainly for the purposes of conserving water. The property is located on North Nevada and Telegraph, and this property, as you know, has been in front of you a couple different times for various other applications, the most recent being the wrought iron decorative fence around the property. That hasn't been installed yet, but these are some current pictures of the property, just to kind of give an idea of what it looks like right now. And then just to note for the record, there was, up until recently, a large cottonwood right here on the Telegraph Street side of the property, but it has since been cut down by the city because it was diseased and obviously causing some problems, as several of the cottonwoods, unfortunately, in the district tend to do. So the applicant is requesting that the turf area be removed, and they'd like to put in a xeriscape plan, and they've provided us with a rough sketch of what that would look like. It's basically going to have some Nevada gold rock as the base with boulders and then a variety of plants and trees. One of the conditions of approval that I have recommended in the staff report is related to the public right-of-ways. So in the plan that's being proposed by the applicant, you can see where I'm pointing the arrow, where it says R for rock, and they're proposing pavers as well. Historically in the district, there have been trees in that planting strip between the sidewalk and the street, and they're not proposing to put any back. So one of the conditions that I've recommended is that they be required to put trees so that it's a little bit more consistent with what is typically found in the district. Aside from that, the landscaping they're proposing on site, they would need to comply with the Division 3 landscape standards in our development standards, and we don't have a requirement for turf. They would just need to meet the minimum requirements for plant materials and ground coverage and things like that, and then trees, of course. Just a couple pictures, and these are in your application as well, of not only some of the landscape plans that they've done in the past, the applicant, but also some of the plants that they're proposing. This is some boulders, as well as Nevada Gold ground cover rock. Same thing, Nevada Gold ground cover rock, also boulders and ground cover rock. And then a variety of plant materials, and most of them they're not large enough on the screen for me to tell you what they are, but in general, drought-tolerant perennials, and then trees that would include crab apples and red oaks, and then some other shrubbery as well. So staff's recommending approval with a couple conditions that are not standard. One I mentioned, which was to comply with the landscape standards and that tree and plant materials will be required in the landscape strip. We won't accept just rock in the landscape strip. And then also, because these things are typical in various parts of the district, I don't know if there are any on site, but if there are any hitching posts or carriage steps or other historic features found as they're tearing up the turf, then we would want those to be retained as well. I'm happy to answer any questions, and unfortunately, the applicant is not here.
Well, I have a question relevant to the tree suggestion that's between the sidewalk and the street, we're saying. Are there
Correct.
recommendations for what types of trees so they don't spill over too much into a walkway and, the parking area of the street?
Yeah, I don't have specific recommendations as it relates to that, but we do have in our landscape standards a list of appropriate trees that are acceptable throughout the city that they would need to look at for that. But we can make a note that they need to take that into consideration if you wanted to stipulate that in your approval, that maybe they need to be a smaller, more compact tree or something that is more narrow and not necessarily very wide, if that's a concern.
Also, the root structure, cottonwood is going to spread where, like a linden tree is going to go deep. Considerations like that.
We could stipulate that too. Yeah.
I have one other concern. It would be nice to get the drawings that they submit, so it's to a scale and just not a bunch of letters thrown where plants are. I mean, we kind of expect that of what we have to provide. I just think it could have been, and I see it wasn't the owner that did it, Western Environment, so they've got a background in being able to produce those plans. Just a little bit nicer, so I don't have a problem with what they want to do, but presentation-wise, it helps projects in the future.
Yeah, this was, I can tell you, it was a last-minute submittal. I know, go figure. It's pretty obvious from what was submitted. It was relatively last minute, but they were trying to get on the agenda so that they didn't have to wait until the November meeting for an approval, so. Okay.
I'll agree with Don there that there should be some minimums, a north arrow, things like that.
Yeah, and I'll note, as a part of, they will have to submit a true, real landscape plan for approval to the Planning Division that meets the standards under Division 3, so.
This is the home that Mr. Ripley's been working on, isn't it? Didn't we approve the windows on this home?
The windows and then the fence most recently.
Right, then the fence most recently.
Yes, correct.
Mr. Ripley was here. Okay, thank you.
Any public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Can I just ask, Susan, is your recommendation, or that's in the staff report you said, right?
The recommended conditions?
With the tree issue?
Yes, with the trees and, any historic features they find when they're pulling the turf up, yeah.
Okay. I move to approve HRC-15-083, a request from Peter Sennett, property owner Pruitt Family Trust, to replace the existing turf area with xeriscape landscaping on property zone residential office located at 403 North Nevada Street, APN 003-225-04. Based on the findings and conditions of approval outlined in the staff report, the standards and guidelines for rehabilitation, the Carson City Historic District guidelines, and consistent with Historic Resources Commission policies.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, I already called for a public comment. Do I need another one? Yeah. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Okay, next item, agenda item F3. Her HRC 15-070, recommend staff submittal of the 2016 Historic Preservation Fund Grant application for the insert project name here. I like that. Do we have a name?
Well, hopefully you'll pick one, yes.
It's the Unknown Project on behalf of Carson City, a certified local government.
Right.
Explain.
Yes. So if you continue into the text in the memo that I provided, there are 4 options that were on the list that were discussed at last month's meeting that I was unfortunately unable to attend. We had taken off the Anderson and Perini Ranch based on the Commission's recommendations. The Kings Canyon Cultural Resources Inventory is still on. The Kings Canyon Road National Register nomination, the Nevada State Prison Historic Structures Report, and just as a reminder, so we have $29,000 from the SHPO now, or from the Historic Preservation Fund grant, to be doing however many historic structure reports we can do for the prison as a part of the 2015 grant. But there are, as you know, several structures that need structure reports, so this would be in addition to that. And then 4th, blue line maintenance, historic building markers, and historic district street sign toppers was an addition from the last meeting. So it's up to the commission members that are here today to deliberate on that. There is public here to address this as well.
Thank you, Susan.
We all feel a sense of power with 3 people absent.
Let's have any commission comments.
Yeah, I have one real question. Like, for example, number 4. I mean, I'd love to get to the historic district sign toppers and so on. I noticed there's some new blue paint on the blue line, at least where I was walking the other day. But, but those kind of things tend to get just bumped for something bigger or more, current or whatever. Just can we do several things if there's enough money that year? I don't know about this year. Things were lean last time, and they may be lean again, but, it's like we're going to tend to bump that, and I won't live long enough to see the historic district street sign toppers, for example.
Well, let's not bump it then.
Right, well, but on the other hand, I do think we need to continue with the prison structural reports, and that much money's not going to get them all done, undoubtedly, et cetera. So can you go for several things? That's the question.
Yes, I can. Mm-hmm. And I know that Commissioner Drews has recommended against that in the past, and he isn't here, of course, today to discuss it. I have never submitted more than one application, but I don't know that there's any reason why we couldn't.
Or alternately, are there other money pathways out there we might, think about, small grants, whatever, to do sign toppers and so on.
I can certainly look into that if
thing.
you think it would be more appropriate to use a different source of money for that type of thing.
It may well be out there for
Yeah. I don't know what those are
historic
under the
districts
historic
and so on.
guise, but we can look at it for sure, yeah.
Question for you, Susan. So you said that we have how much from leftover, out of the 2015 fund, and we're now also talking adding more from the 2016?
Well, so the 2015, we were awarded $29,000. And so that plus our match is close to, I think it's around 50,000 altogether. Now, the match would be in kind through volunteer hours from the commissioners themselves, and then any staff members and things like that. So the 29,000 hasn't been expended yet, and that's just solely for 2015 and specifically for the historic structures reports. So it's kind of been on hold because I haven't executed the funding agreement since I had been gone for so long, so I need to do that. But we have to do the structures report under the 15 grant and submit it to SHPO for approval before June 30th of 2016 to get that 29,000. And then 2016's grant versus the 2015 would then be, if you wanted to continue doing historic structures reports for the prison, then that's what we would apply for. And then if they felt so inclined. They generally, I believe, need to give certified local governments money regardless. It just really depends on how much money they give us at the end of the day. So.
Well, it sounds like the way I'm understanding it, that we've kind of committed already to the prison reports for the 2015 monies, but the 2016 monies, which are not applied for yet, that's what we can discuss about possibly using some of something like that for these toppers in the blue line. And I don't know how much money we're talking about as far as a budget for that, but I imagine it wouldn't absorb that entire amount.
Well, and we also don't know how much we'll get out of that 29,000, how far that'll get us down the road.
Right. I mean, yeah, so the 29,000 is obviously just for historic structures reports. It may get us 1, it may get us 3, it really just depends. What we get back is when we do our request for proposals with the consultants. And beyond that, I mean, there are, I think, and Liz, correct me if I'm wrong, 15 to 20 historically significant buildings that need to have historic structures reports done on them. Is that right?
Well, that was going to be my question. How many are there? Because there's more than 15 historic structures, and I'm not sure which ones they prioritized. Lynn might know, maybe? No.
I think regardless, and I would need to go back because it was prioritized under our 2014 grant money that we just finished up, so I'll need to go back and look and see what it is. But regardless, there are more than probably what we can do with the 29,000. That's really what the bottom line is.
Undoubtedly, that's the case.
Any other commission?
So what was the argument in the past for not diluting things and asking for maybe, like a little bit to get going on this historic district sign idea, et cetera? I mean, maybe that's not enough money either. You're not even asking for enough, but you'd like to get the ball rolling, and maybe other sources of funding show up because they see progress. And, I mean, there's certainly other sources of funding potentially out in the world there. So maybe getting the ball rolling a little bit helps say, hey, we really want to do this, and et cetera, et cetera. So how do you play that game?
To be honest, I don't remember the reasoning behind it
So
when we
let me
talked
ask
about
you-
it last year.
When you're applying, like you're going to apply for the 2016, are you applying for specific projects, or are you applying for the historic district in general, and then we decide how that gets divvied up?
No, you decide the project, and that's what you're here to do today.
So what you're saying, the way I'm understanding it is, if we have, let's say, 3 things we want to do, they would compete with each other.
Yes, that's true. They would compete with each other.
That's been Mike's argument in the past.
Okay.
Speaking, this is heresy. We put a lot of resources towards the prison, and I just think it's, the blue line, we get tourists here. This isn't just about painting it blue or maintaining it. It's about the historic building markers and the street sign toppers, which I think are important too. And I don't want to take away from the prison project, but I think we need to throw some of our emphasis back to our existing historic district in Carson too. And I personally support number 4 this time.
I'm tending to agree that way, mainly because of all the activity that's going to be happening downtown with the new downtown project, several of the private projects around the perimeter. that we need to keep up with our the community look that we generate for the public. But at the same time, we understand the historic, relevance of the prison and all the huge amount of money it's going to take to do what they do. However, we have to balance that. We have other responsibilities, not just the prison. And that if we want to commit a majority of our efforts towards that, that's great. But I still think we should keep some of these other smaller things moving along so they don't get forgotten.
Right, that's what, I mean, it's not an either-or thing in terms of worthwhile stuff, number one. But number two, we got the newer status for the West Side Historic District. We have the signs in place that lead the traffic, the visitors in the general direction of where they needed to go. And then we need to take some further steps to say, okay, now you're in the zone, but what are you looking at? So we got, markers on historic structures and et cetera. Really helps them go, oh yeah, and go further with that idea of visiting that historic part of town. So I think we have some responsibility. We applied for that added status. They put the signs in the highway, et cetera. We should commit some money to taking those next steps. Which, by the way, what about the kiosk idea and that sort of thing in one or more spots? Have we ever gone back to that? That's yet another thing that once we get them in a certain part of the area, giving them something to look at in a map and
Yeah, I know that's been talked about a couple of times, and I think that's something we could potentially consider, and if you wanted to add it to this, you certainly could. I don't know from a cost standpoint right now and how much that would be. And my concern about that, while I think that having some kind of a wayfinding kind of kiosk would be great, is, where do we put it? Is there a place in the district that's better than another place, really? And that's why as staff, I tend to lean, if you're going to look at this one, more towards something that really improves the overall district, and maybe that's the first step if this is the way that you want to go. And then at some point in the future, once we get through and kind of start identifying the historic district a little bit better, then we add a kiosk to it once we figure out where that good entry place is. So that's just, staff's
I would agree with you. We should start broadly, and then we can think of other things. But keep it in mind, and where it should be probably should have something to do with where do the signs direct the traffic? Where do they end up and then go, now what do I do? Where's that place? Or maybe there's several places. That would be where it should be, But that doesn't have to be what we do now. I think there's enough to do for the whole district at this point.
I was going to ask, is the Historic Preservation Fund, what are their criteria for the projects that are successful applicants? Are they looking for restoration of a building? Are they looking for just enhancement? Or do they have guidelines like that?
It's very broad. For example, I don't know if you remember the card decks. That was a Historic Preservation Fund grant that did those card decks. So it's really, I wouldn't say it's necessarily specific to structures or specific to inventories. I mean, it's just generally promoting, historic and cultural resources. So I think that the 4 items you have in front of you, definitely all of those would fit that bill.
Any other commissioner comments?
I'm leaning towards number 4. Not to abandon the prisons, as you say, but
I like number
we'll be back.
4, but I know that $29,000 is not going to go very far, and it seems like a crucial opportunity to be able to put money towards that. I'd like to see at least the administration building in Cell Block B with a historic structure report.
And we don't know where the 29 is going to be spent.
That's right,
really.
and I think that's kind of problematic, because, you want to know, is that going to get half a building, whole building? I'm really not sure.
Well, it seems like we should have known that by now.
Any public comment?
For
For the record, my name is Glenn Wharton. I'm the president of the Prison Preservation Society. I just wanted to come up and tell you that I appreciate your rock on one side and your hard spot on the other. You have a difficult job, and frankly, I have to tell you, our organization is not so xenophobic, if you will, as to assume that we're the only historic worthy in Carson City. So please feel free to vote as you wish. We understand that there's a lot of different priorities and a lot of different needs in this community. So we just appreciate what you've given us already. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to comment. One of the problems is we're sort of trying to move ahead without enough information. It's like going in the voting booth and going, well, I know a darn thing about those three folks for trustee on the school board, but, you just pick one or none. It's hard. So, for example, how much money would it take to make some reasonable step forward on the blue line maintenance, beginning some historic building markers, which can be a small or a large project depending on which buildings you want to aim at and how many of them, and street markers, if you could do a certain area and then hope to do more later. I don't even know how much money we're talking about here. It seems like something like that, 29,000, let's say, since we're using that number, that would go a long way. That we should probably do a bunch of things for a project like that, but I don't know how much. I don't know. Everything costs more than I think it costs. Life goes by like that. But, so, I don't know why we couldn't have some dollop for that project, at least to get it rolling and get a sense of how much can you do for 10 grand or something, whatever it is, and come up with some money to continue the prison structural reports as well. I don't see why there's not an argument for splitting it a little bit. Obviously emphasizing the prison then in that scenario, and then some decent dollop to get this other thing rolling, and then you get a sense of what does it take to do so many of this and so many of that, and we'll know more the next go-round.
Yeah, and I apologize, I don't have costs yet on the blue line or the street toppers. Obviously, I will need to have that information when I submit the application, so I know how much I am going to be asking for, but I don't have it today.
So let me ask you a question on that. So let's just assume we vote for two of these items tonight, and not just one, but two. How do you then proceed with how you're going to apply for this? Is it you come up with a number that you apply for and you see and you hope for the best of how much of percentage of, if any, we will receive, or is it how does it get broken out when you have two items? Would you ask for 40,000 for one and 10 for the other, or how would you strategize?
Yeah,
that?
I would definitely have to allocate, appropriately, and it would be based on. I can't say what it would be based on with the structures reports because I don't know which structure would end up getting it. We don't know how many structures we're going to have under the 29,000 first, so I don't know if that's going to take out the first three and I'm on to number 4, or if it takes out one and I'm on to number 2. One thing, though, I will say that does play a big part in us making the selection or putting the amount down is what we can match. So that's really important because I can't ask for $100,000 and say that I can come up with $80,000 as a match because that's not realistic for the city. So that does play a big role as well.
Knowing that, my opinion really here is that we ask for two items on this agenda, and then we find out what kind of money we need for any improvements on the blue line, the street toppers and thing, what kind of budget we're looking at. And we don't have, like you were saying, we don't have to have the entire amount first time. We can get some to get the project started. Maybe we have enough this year to do the blue line, and maybe next year we can get the toppers done. But I think we should have at least some allocation in there for that, as well as the prison.
Otherwise, it just gets swept under the rug forever. But really, if 20% of the request were for the blue line and markers and such, and 80% are for the prison, as high as we can get the number with the matching and issues and everything, then something like that would seem like a reasonable start. And it still won't be enough for the structures. They're going to need yet more, right? This is going to go on and on.
I wish Mike was here because I knew his rationale only applying for one. And it goes also to being able to focus on that, and also it goes back to the matching portion of this with the city. I mean, Susan can ask for whatever she wants, but if we're given a grant, as she said, for $100,000 and we've got to come up with 80, then neither one of them are going to happen because they just don't have that money. You know, it's I think we have to be kind of prudent with what we're requesting. I look at it that we've got $29,000 for some structures, and we should be getting some engineering proposals for that work. And we see where that goes, and then, you know, the prison is not going to be a short-term project. We know that this is a long, let's be patient and move through this. So I personally would like to make a motion.
But I'd personally like to make one more comment, and that is, so the prison work's not short either. It's going to be many, many years of hard work to do all these various phases, let's face it. So I think we should continue to support moving that forward as the Historic Resources Commission and one cog in the wheel coming up with some money to do all that. And that being true, then you have to use it strengthens the argument for maybe submitting two things, because otherwise years go by and you've done nothing else but structural reports for the prison, and that's, you know, a little too narrow focus too, even though it's very worthwhile. So that's the argument for at least thinking about getting some of the things rolling, and it should be clear for SHPO too that this is, it's not even no matter how much they give us, it's probably not enough money. You know, we're just keeping the worthwhile things moving forward.
I also like what you said earlier, Greg, about seed money, where you get a project started, people like the result, and you have something to show them, and then they're like, well, we can donate more money for that or find a grant. But I support going for two, even though I do understand the rationale.
With the emphasis on the prison, I would think, and you can figure out the proportions, we're not really saying that, but I mean, it's certainly, I want that to move with some good-sized steps forward, and it's a bunch of bucks, let's face it.
Any more comment? Don? Craft it. Time has passed, huh?
Well, I mean, I'm just saying what I'm saying, but if we do two names, so we just leave it at that and you apportion it as well, you've heard the discussion and you'll just do what you do.
So what I can do, I'll just do what I do, yeah. What I can do is, assuming that you vote on two, I will, before the October meeting, research into what I think is an appropriate split, and then come back and give you a report at the October meeting, if that would be appropriate.
And if our missing compatriots rebel at what we did, we'll be happy to listen. I mean, if we really need to revisit.
Okay, Greg, go ahead and put your name on that one. Go ahead. I'm accepting any motions offered.
Yeah. Then I can vote no.
I move to recommend that staff submit a 2016 Historic Preservation Fund grant application for Nevada State Prison Historic Structures Report and for the Carson City Blue Line Maintenance, Historic Building Markers, and Historic District Street Sign Toppers Project on behalf of the Carson City, a certified local government.
Hearing a motion, do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
All those opposed? The motion carries.
When you go for these, you gotta have you gotta be
Unanimous. Susan?
Wait, no, you just have to vote on this one other thing. I still need a quorum for the last thing. Then you can go.
Okay.
All right.
All right, where am I? Let's see.
Okay, item, we're down to G, staff reports. Susan.
F4, actually. F4.
Oh, wait, do we pass one up? Number 3. I'm looking at the 13th one.
It's just the agenda. It's just on the agenda. There's no staff report for it.
motion?
Yeah. Item F4, HRC 15-090 for possible action approval request to change the January 2016 Historic Resources Commission meeting from January 14th, 2016 to January 6th, 2016.
I'd like to make that motion, please.
I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Any public comment on this item? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. All those in favor signify saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Now we're on to item G, staff reports.
I don't think I have any staff reports, actually, so I'm gonna turn it over to the commission for any commission reports.
Do we have any commission reports?
No, I sure don't.
I guess it's a report. This is going to be my last meeting at the commission. I've accepted a position at Mesa Verde National Park in Colorado. I'm going to be leaving at the end of the month. And I just want to say it's been a real pleasure and an honor to know you guys and serve up here on the commission. And Susan, thank you for everything, and Lee, and a lot of interesting projects. It was fun to be a part of this, so.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for all your input. And you're going to a beautiful place.
Yes, come visit.
Definitely.
Item G1, future agenda items.
Not aware of any, except for bringing back the split on the HPF grant for the next meeting. So as of right now, we'll plan on a meeting in October, in November, not October, so.
And just remind me on that note, just getting more focused and doing a better job with solar requests in the future. Where are we on that curve?
I have in my notes that I needed to look into getting a consultant to do a solar workshop at some point this year. So it's there. Yeah.
Moving on to item H, public comments. Members of the public who wish to address the commission may approach the podium at this time to speak on any matter not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. No action may be taken on matter raised under this public comment portion of the agenda. Any public comment? Seeing none, I'll move to item I, action on adjournment. Do I have a motion?
I move we adjourn.
Second?
I second.
Meeting is adjourned.
Yeah, there's not a quorum, but in this case.